Ethan, 17, craved the unknown. He was always searching for something more, something beyond the ordinary. The surface web, with its endless cat videos and memes, bored him to no end. It felt repetitive, mundane, and uninspiring. He yearned for the forbidden, the things that were hidden from plain sight, the hidden corners of the internet whispered about in hushed tones. The deep web, a place of mystery and intrigue.
I stumbled upon it late one night, my curiosity piqued and my heart racing. A gateway hidden in plain sight, a simple link, an onion browser, and I was in. It was almost too easy. The air crackled with digital static, a sign that I had crossed into a different realm.
He felt a thrill, a rush of adrenaline, a nervous anticipation of what he might find. The unknown was calling to him. At first it was harmless. Forums on obscure topics, encrypted chat rooms where people discussed everything under the sun, black markets selling mundane goods like old books and vintage electronics. But curiosity, like a powerful current, pulled him deeper and deeper. He ventured further, each click a descent into a darker abyss, each link a step further from the light.
I found websites with names that sent shivers down my spine, names that hinted at things better left unseen. Sites filled with cryptic symbols, distorted images, and text written in languages I couldn't understand. It was like stepping into a nightmare.
A sense of unease settled over him, a feeling that he was treading dangerous waters, yet he couldn't turn back. The allure of the unknown was too strong, pulling him deeper into the digital abyss. Ethan learned to navigate the deep web's labyrinthine corridors. He learned the language of anonymity, the art of disappearing into the digital ether. He began to feel invincible, untouchable in this hidden world. He stumbled upon a forum called the Crimson Circle. The forum's description was simple: where reality bends. Intrigued and terrified in equal measure, he clicked. The forum was filled with tales of the unexplained, of encounters with entities beyond human comprehension. Ethan dismissed them as creepypastas, stories designed to scare, but a seed of doubt had been planted. One post in particular caught his eye. It spoke of a being that haunted the deep web, a monstrous entity that could cross the digital divide and enter the real world. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Days turned into nights as Ethan became consumed by the Crimson Circle. He devoured every post, every story, every whispered rumor about the entity. He told himself it was just a game, a way to pass the time. One night he stumbled upon a new post. It was a link, a single line of text. Click here to see the truth. The accompanying image was a swirling vortex of crimson light. Ethan hesitated.
I knew I should log off, walk away, but the curiosity, the gnawing need to know was too strong.
He clicked the link. The screen went black. Then, slowly, the crimson vortex reappeared, this time filling his entire screen. Ethan felt a strange pull, a sensation like falling into the depths of the internet itself. Suddenly, his computer flickered back to life. The crimson vortex was gone, replaced by a static image. It was a close-up of an eye, bloodshot and filled with an ancient, unfathomable malice. Ethan recoiled in horror.
The eye seemed to follow my every move, its gaze burning into my soul. I slammed my laptop shut, heart pounding in my chest.
He tried to rationalize what he had seen. It was just a picture, a cleverly designed image meant to scare. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had seen something real, something truly evil. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the crimson eye, staring back at him from the darkness. He felt a presence in his room, a coldness that seeped into his bones. But it was too late. The whispers started subtly, almost imperceptibly at first, faint whispers at the edge of Ethan's hearing, pronouncements of his name in the dead of night. They seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. He began to see fleeting shadows in his peripheral vision, glimpses of movement that vanished when he turned to face them. These shadows seemed to dance just beyond his line of sight, taunting him. His electronics started behaving erratically, as if they were possessed by some unseen force. His phone would randomly shut off, only to turn back on with strange symbols displayed on the screen. Symbols that he couldn't decipher, but felt ominous. The television in his living room would flicker to life in the middle of the night, static filling the screen. The static seemed to whisper to him, forming words he couldn't quite understand. S1. The next day I tried to forget about the Crimson Portal. The very thought of it sent shivers down my spine. I deleted my browser history, shut down my computer, and tried to erase any trace of my curiosity. I vowed to stay away from the deep web, convinced that it was the source of my torment.
I was terrified. The fear was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, that I was letting my imagination run wild. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the more real it felt. But deep down, I knew the truth. This was no mere figment of my imagination. I had invited something into my life, something sinister and powerful, and now it was here to stay, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Desperate, I tried to find the Crimson Circle again, hoping for answers, for a way to undo what I had done. But the forum was gone, vanished without a trace.
His nightmares became more vivid, more terrifying. He dreamt of the Crimson Eye, watching him, tormenting him. He would wake up in a cold sweat, the feeling of an unseen presence lingering in his room. His waking life wasn't much better. The shadows grew bolder, the whispers louder. He began to see the Crimson Eye everywhere he looked, in reflections, in the patterns of the wallpaper, even in the faces of strangers. His sanity started to unravel. He couldn't tell what was real and what was a figment of his imagination. His world, once so familiar and safe, had become a terrifying, surreal nightmare.
One night I woke up to a blood-curdling scream. I scrambled out of bed, my heart pounding in my chest. The scream had come from my parents' room. I raced down the hallway, fear lending speed to my feet. I threw open my parents' door and froze in horror. They were gone. Their room was in disarray, furniture overturned, clothes strewn across the floor. But there was no sign of a struggle, no sign of forced entry. It was as if they had simply vanished into thin air. And then I saw it. Scrawled across the wall in what looked like blood was a single chilling message. "You're next."
Ethan collapsed to his knees, his mind reeling. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the core that the entity from the Crimson Portal was responsible. It had taken his parents, and now it was coming for him. Ethan spent the next few days in a state of terror-stricken paranoia. He boarded up his windows, locked his doors, and armed himself with a baseball bat, his only defense against the unknown. He tried to call the police, but the phone lines were dead. He tried to use his computer, but it was fried, the screen displaying a distorted image of the Crimson Eye. He was trapped, alone, and hunted.
The entity toyed with me, appearing and disappearing at will. I would catch glimpses of it in the shadows, hear its whispers echoing in the silence of my house. It was relentless, its presence a suffocating weight on my chest. I tried to run to escape the house, but every time I got close to the door, the entity would appear, blocking my path. It was as if it wanted me to suffer, to savor my fear.
Just when Ethan thought he could take no more, he found something. Hidden in his father's desk drawer beneath a pile of old papers was a small, leather-bound notebook. He opened it and began to read. The notebook was filled with his father's handwriting, pages and pages of notes and diagrams.
As I read, my blood ran cold. My father had been researching the deep web, specifically the legend of the Crimson Portal. He had discovered that the entity was real, and he had been trying to find a way to stop it. According to his notes, the entity fed on fear. It was drawn to those who sought the unknown, those who dared to peer into the darkness. The only way to defeat it, to send it back to the digital abyss from whence it came, was to confront it, to stare into its eye and show no fear.
Ethan knew what he had to do. He had spent countless nights researching, poring over his father's old journals, and preparing himself mentally for this moment. Armed with his father's knowledge and a newfound resolve, he decided to face the entity. He knew that running away was no longer an option. He had to confront the darkness head-on. He walked into the living room, the epicenter of the paranormal activity, and stood in the center of the room. The air was thick with an oppressive energy, making it hard to breathe.
"I'm not afraid of you, show yourself!" His voice echoed through the room, filled with a mixture of defiance and fear.
The room grew cold, an unnatural chill that seeped into his bones. The air crackled with energy, a palpable tension that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. And then, slowly, the entity began to materialize in front of him. It was as if the shadows themselves were coalescing into a form. It was a grotesque mockery of a human form, its flesh a sickly gray, its limbs elongated and twisted at unnatural angles. The sight was both horrifying and mesmerizing. Its head was a mass of writhing tentacles, and its eyes, two burning crimson orbs, stared at Ethan with an insatiable hunger. The creature seemed to radiate malevolence.
I fought back the urge to scream. Every instinct told me to run, but I stood my ground. I focused on my father's words, on the need to show no fear. His teachings were my only shield against the terror before me. I met the entity's gaze, my own gaze unwavering. I could feel its power, but I refused to let it see my fear.
The entity hissed, a sound that sent chills down Ethan's spine. It was a noise unlike anything he had ever heard, a mix of anger and hunger. It lunged at him, its claws outstretched, its jaws open in a silent snarl. Ethan braced himself, ready for the confrontation. S2. Hiss. Ethan closed his eyes and braced himself for the end. But it never came. He opened his eyes slowly. The entity was gone. The room was silent, still. Had he imagined it all? Was he finally free?
I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, my body still thrumming with adrenaline. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, and then I saw it. A single crimson eye, staring back at me from the reflection in the television screen. It blinked, slowly, deliberately. My blood ran cold. I had been so focused on the entity, on the threat it posed in the real world, that I'd forgotten the most important lesson of all. The deep web was always watching.